Folks, Martyupnorth here. Just wanted to wish everybody a happy new year. Hope for all the best for you, health and happiness and adventure wise in 2020. This will be my last video of 2019. What I thought I'd do is 2019 was such a fantastic year for me. I did 14 hikes in 2019. I did some great collaborations. I did some pack rafting. I met new people. So I just wanted to do a quick review of how the year went for me and hope you enjoy this video. So as I said in the intro, I did 14 hikes in 2019. The first hike I did was shortly after my father passed away. I went down south in Kananaskis, in my favorite area, and did a overnight winter hike in an area called Fitzsimmons Creek. It was basically I was feeling cabin fever and I needed to get out of the house, especially after my father passing away. And the month of February in particular was a brutal month. We set a record in southern Alberta for a February cold temperature. The average temperature was below minus 20 Celsius. So nothing too crazy about that hike, just in and out on snowshoes, not a hot tent or anything like that. And then the season kicked off in earnest in April, on April 21, 22, when I went to Glacier Lake. So I'd been there a couple of times. My son Patrick had been there a couple of times, but I went with Patrick and Ray. So it was Ray's first trip to Glacier. I like doing Glacier. It's a nice early season hike. You can do it without snowshoes. Sometimes you have a little bit of post-holing to do, but generally speaking, it's an area accessible in April, May. The weather's warming up. Don't need crazy warm sleeping bags. And we enjoyed a beautiful night at the lake. And then the next morning, we had fun just walking on the ice. So that was great. As many of you know, this year was the year where I wanted to do more collaborations. So the first big collaboration for me was in June 22, 23 weekend, headed up into Castlegar area, or the Alexandra River area, with Laurent. So Laurent's a crazy Frenchman, moved to Alberta recently. He fell in love with Alberta, came here many times through work and fell in love with the province. And when the opportunity for him presented itself to transfer here, he didn't hesitate and he transferred. Him and I have been talking about doing the Canal Trail next year perhaps, and for that we will need pack rafts, and we'd been following Ben Brochu and others. So after corresponding for nearly a year on social media, we finally met and we went for a hike up to Castlegar, not up to Castlegar, up the Alexandra River, heading towards the headwaters of the Alexandra, and then we floated it back down. So we were rookies with this whole new sport of pack rafting, but that turned out to be a really fun trip, and it proved that pack rafting will open up a whole bunch of new opportunities for us. Trails or hikes that were in and out before, now I'm going to do them, and then we'll float them out. So the pack raft was a really neat idea. Then following that was another nice collaboration, at first, this time with Matty Outdoors, Matt St. Arnaud. So Matt had a weekend available. He put out a post on social media, and I was the only one who was available to go hiking with him that weekend. So, and he had proposed to do a trail down south, but I suggested that maybe we do something in between for both of us. And I had never been to Cataract Pass, so I had proposed that. So off we set, Matt, myself, and our two dogs, Wanda and Tika, and we went in over Sunset Pass to Pinto Lake, and then followed the Klein River up through Cataract Pass and Nigel. And Cataract Pass did not disappoint. It is one of the most amazing passes in the parks, as far as I'm concerned. And now that we've been there, we have other opportunities. I'm contemplating something that I'm going to call the Super Brazeau Loop, and start at Pinto and go up to Brazeau and come out at Sunwapta. So first trip, first of many trips with Matt. Then in August, I did a quick one to Loomis Lake with Karen and Ray. Again, I wanted to test the pack raft, see what that's like. going carrying that additional 10 pounds, and I wanted to go farther and uphill with the pack, so I chose Loomis. And I remember that one, I thought, oh, it's just a 9-10K hike. And I didn't even look it up. I was just remembering it from memory. And it turns out it's closer to 17, 18 kilometers with a pretty steep uphill at the end. We got there, no problem. And we stayed right at the lake with an amazing sunset and an amazing sunrise. So all in all, and I got to float the lake. Didn't catch any fish, but so be it. Then the collaborations continued. In August, I invited, again, somebody that I'd corresponded with a lot, and somebody who sent some nice emails and nice cards to our family when we were having difficulties with my dad, and that's Eric Coleman. And Eric wanted to come up to Alberta sort of on his own, and I said, no way, man. I'd sort of built a friendship with Eric, and I said, if you come up, I'll go hiking with you. And so we arranged something. He came up in mid-August, and we did the Brazeau, Pabocton, Nigel Trail. We had 4 days of fantastic weather and great conversation, and the start of another great friendship. So that was really, really fun hike. Now, just prior to starting that hike with Eric, I did a little live stream, and I let people know that we were leaving tomorrow morning, and that's when I got that evening. I got a text, actually an Instagram text out of the blue from somebody named Chef Evan Robertson, and Evan introduced himself as the executive chef at a restaurant. He said, I know that you and picking up Eric at the airport, and you're thinking of coming and you're going to go to your house and cook a steak. He's like, why don't you come down to the restaurant and I'll make a bison ravioli. So how could I refuse an offer like that? Now, I just want to talk about that real quick. Some people in life, I think a lot of people in life fail to grasp at opportunities or see when an opportunity is presented to them. And in the case like this, where a stranger says, come on down, it's easy to find an excuse to say no, but I said yes. And Eric and I went to Evan's restaurant. Evan sat down with us. I hit it off with him right away. That's where he shared his plans of doing some backcountry cooking. And I decided right there and then that when we were going to do when Eric and I were going to be done with the Brazeau loop, that we come back and see if Evan wanted to come with us. And he agreed. So after our Brazeau hike, Evan joined Eric and I and my wife Karen, and we went up to Lake of the Horns. And again, one of those fantastic little tarn lakes in Kananaskis country. Fairly easy hike, but Evan got to showcase his real talent, passion for cooking, and he made us a gourmet meal, the first of many in the backcountry. And that one was what he called his Martyupnorth inspired smoky, his bison smoky with mashed potatoes and broccolini and a nice sauce. And the fact that I can remember very specifically a meal like that 3-4 months later just shows what kind of an impact that trip had and that collaboration. So that was great. Followed that hike with an interesting hike, a very, very memorable hike in September. In September, Evan and I immediately did a follow-up hike to Lake of the Horns, and we went to Carnarvon Lake with my son, Ray. And again, another fantastic little tarn lake with amazing views and solitude, and fairly easy. I recommend that one to people. Then came September 7th, 8th. Again, Matt from Matty Outdoors did a shout out on social media asking who was interested in going on a hike. And this time 6 or 7 people responded, and we all chose to go to Lake of the Falls. And I was pleased to go there because I had been around Landslide Lake in the past, and I'd been up the Klein Valley on my way to Pinto, but I'd never been to Lake of the Falls, and it was definitely on my list of places to go. 7 of us left the parking lot. Again, people that I'd interacted with on social media in the past. So Nick Harlan, Devin Houghton, Justin Hick, Bo Bellamy. I'd never met Bo, but and Matt. I'm forgetting somebody. My mind's drawing a blank, but I mentioned him in the video, and then we hooked up with Matty's friends who are already at the lake, and that was also Matty's birthday weekend. So I didn't take a lot of footage because it was such a fun weekend of sitting around the fire and chatting that I literally forgot to take out the camera and document. But I still documented some of it, but it gives me a perfect excuse to go back at one of what I would consider one of the most amazing backcountry lakes in the area. Following that, I hooked up again with Laurent. This time, Laurent and I decided to use our packrafts. The plan was to hike up to the headwaters of the Chaba. The Chaba is a river that starts way up in the almost in the Columbia ice fields, and then it flows and it eventually dumps into the Athabasca. So we were going to go up to the headwaters of the Chaba, float it down to the headwaters of to the Athabasca, and then float down to where the Athabasca starts to parallel the highway. And the reason that was such a fascinating trip is because the bridge over the Athabasca has been out since about 2014. So very few people venture that part of the world and onto Fortress Lake. And if you remember that video, that's the one where I just couldn't contain my excitement. When we crossed the Athabasca on our pack rafts, that was the start of an absolutely amazing adventure. We realized that the headwaters of the Chaba were pretty thin, so we camped along the Athabasca and floated out. But a couple of other memorable things about that one was getting lost trying to find Fortress Lake, the encounter we had with the bear, and then floating down the river and being nearly hypothermic, but all adds to the overall experience. So that was fantastic. And then after that was October. In October, I went to Petain Falls, again at the recommendation of Evan. And Petain Falls is in Elk Lakes Provincial Park. I don't go to it in British Columbia. I don't go there very often. It was a late season shoulder hike when it starts to get cold, and I'm amazed that we had that whole park to ourselves. We got to see the falls, we got to camp, we got to experience more fantastic cooking by Evan, and got a taste of an area that I will definitely be exploring again. Following up on that shoulder season adventure, we decided in mid-November to go do the Little Elbow Trail, and again, so that was an opportunity. That was perhaps one of the last weekends we could do that hike because the Kananaskis Highway closes around December 1st. So we did that on November 10th and 12th. That was a test. We did 30 kilometers with snowshoes. We brought our tents, and we each brought 2 sleeping bags. Again, this was and we experienced minus 20 on the first night and minus 16s and some wind, so it was a real good test, but we came through that test with flying colors, and off we went. So between Petain Fall and Little Elbow were 2 late season, almost winter type hikes. I haven't done a lot of winter hiking in the past because I was always busy with hockey, but now I can do more winter hiking. So I wanted to prepare for winter hiking. And for winter hiking, 2 things are important. One is the ability to carry a little bit more weight, which you typically need in winter. And so a little bit more weight. One way to do that is to bring a toboggan or a sled, or in my case, what I call a pulk. And then the other thing is to make winter camping more comfortable by doing hot tenting, which involves a stove and a different style of tent. So after our Little Elbow trip, I built and tested a pulk, and I used that pulk on an overnight by myself. My second solo of the year, so very unusual for me. I usually do a lot of solos. I only did 2 solos this year, and both were into the same area. So again, in early December, I went on a solo trip to Fitzsimmons Creek area with the pulk to test the idea of how much weight can you comfortably carry or pull behind you on the pulk, and that was a fun trip. And then finished it off a couple of weeks ago when Evan and I really tested ourselves, and we went up the Cascade Fire Road past, and we did a 3-night, 4-day adventure. We had ambitious plans of going up the Cascade Road and coming back over a high pass, and coming back out at Mount Norquay, but realized on day 2 that the snow was simply too deep, so we did an in and out on the Cascade Road. So first night at Cascade Bridge, second night at Stony Creek, and then back out to Cascade and home. But tested the Polk. The Polk worked fantastic, brought a little bit more gear, spent a night only in sleeping bags and tents without a stove in minus 30, but proved that it's possible to stay comfortable in those extreme temperatures. And now at the end of the year, I've been building the stove and getting the tent ready. And so in early January, I will be doing a hot tent camping trip. But that's a review of the year. So fantastic year. So I hope you enjoyed this quick video. Highlights of 2019. Once again, I want to thank everybody for being loyal fans. YouTube, I've said it before, has been an amazing adventure for me. It's allowed me to meet new people, interact with new people. Some folks I feel like I know almost personally because of the back and forth on questions and comments and texts and whatnot. I'm also present on other social medias. I've said it before, YouTube has been overwhelmingly positive for me. I especially enjoy the comments, and I try to respond to as many people as possible. So keep all your questions and feedback comments coming. And once again, so Martyupnorth, wishing you all a happy new year in 2020, and hopefully, if you can, get off the beaten path.